Story 1. In the game Rust, I did not shoot the other player who showed up at an airdrop. We split the loot and kept running into each other until we became gaming buddies. His friends and I started making mods for games. One of those mods led to my first programming job, even though I do not have a computer science degree. That job did not last, but it gave me enough experience to get a better position. I met my long-term partner at that job. Being kind to someone in a video game gave me a decent career, a loving partner, and smart, fun friends to game with. Story 2. A couple of decades ago, I went to see the J. Giles Band at a local club. I was a slight fan and had been trying to do more things with my girlfriend, and the tickets were only $10, so why not? When we arrived, the ceilings were low, the hallways to the bathrooms were narrow, and the back doors were chained so people would not sneak in. The concert was decent, especially for $10. The next year, another band played the same venue and tickets were about $20 each. I was not much of a fan and I told her, I only spent $10 to see J. Giles. No way I am spending twice that to see a band I only know 2 songs from. That band was Great White. My cheapness kept me from being in the station nightclub fire. Story 3. In 2015, I attended a large music festival. I had never been to one before, so I found the official Facebook group to get advice and meet people who were going. I commented on a thread about short people who needed help seeing crowded bands and taking pictures. I offered to let someone sit on my shoulders during a band we both liked so she could take pictures if we could not get close enough. We spent the weekend together, continued seeing each other afterward, and have now been together for 10 years, married for 6.5 years. All because of a Facebook comment. Story 4. I was a young university teacher and was scheduled to teach an evening class that semester. A week before the first class, a more senior instructor asked to swap classrooms, which meant I had to drive farther to teach at another campus across town. I was very angry at the time. That semester I met and fell in love with a woman who was taking classes at that campus. That was almost 25 years ago. Since then we married, raised 2 children, and have been happy ever since. I never met the other teacher who requested the swap, but if he had not requested it that semester, my wife and I would never have met. Story 5. In the mid-1970s, my dad was working a dead-end job at a supermarket and had just left the Air Force, where he received some training in computer electronics. He did not know which direction to take next but had applied to many places. On one application, he accidentally transposed the last 2 digits of his phone number, writing 1243 instead of 1234. One morning he woke early and decided to bring donuts to his uncle, who lived in town. While he was visiting, his uncle received a phone call and, after a bit of confusion, said, "Oh, I think you want a different Mr. Example," and handed the phone to my dad. It was a job offer from the company with the application mistake. If he had not gone there that morning, the message might never have reached him, and if he had not transposed those digits, he might have missed it. That job brought him to the city where I grew up and started his career as a network analyst, from which he recently retired. Story 6. One day I was being my wiggly autistic self in class, 2nd grade, probably 1991 or 1992. I was enough of a disruption that my teacher gave me a thin book about Japan and a blank sheet of paper and told me to fill the page with information about the islands of Japan. That was the first time I had really heard of the place, or rather the first time I showed any interest in it. I was interested enough that the next time I saw something Japanese, an orange book about Godzilla, I read it. After that, I decided I was a Godzilla fan even though I had never seen any of the movies. My interest in Japan grew a little. By 7th grade, it was something I liked but did not know in great detail. One of the women who lived in my town started offering Japanese classes at the local library after school. My mom signed me up and I was in that class for a few years. During our 2nd year, the most interesting thing happened to me. A man walking along the coast at Tillamook Spit found a bottle of Suntory whiskey washed up on the shore. Inside the bottle were many letters. He told a coworker, who happened to be the father of one of the other students in my class. The coworker brought the bottle to my teacher. My teacher translated the notes, and it turned out they were from a group of boys who had attended a summer school in Japan 5 years earlier. They had been on a boat, written little letters, put them into the whiskey bottle, and thrown it overboard. It took 5 years, but the bottle traveled all the way from Japan to Oregon. Each of the boys left contact information, and one of the contacts was still valid. My teacher called that family and exchanged pleasantries. My teacher was friends with a local travel agency that specialized in trips to Japan. It so happened that Delta Airlines had recently opened a direct flight from Portland to the city where the boys lived. To promote the flight to Fukuoka, Japan, Delta Airlines and Azamano Travel sent a man, John Fruing, to Japan for a short visit. Then they invited each of the boys who had written a note to come to Oregon. One of them stayed with my family. He was 17 and I was about 13 or 14. He was so cool and became my Japanese big brother. When they visited, we attended banquets and receptions, and I met the mayors of several towns. The flight to Japan was not as successful as Delta had hoped. So to drum up more publicity, my teacher convinced them to send my entire Japanese class to Japan for a week. At that time, we were dirt poor. Something like this would never have happened otherwise. Cannot tell you how much fun we had. We went to castles and temples, toured a television station and a baseball stadium, visited Hakata doll factories, ate wonderful food, saw kabuki, no theater and bunraku puppetry, and experienced the tea ceremony. We visited the Nagasaki Peace Memorial. I appeared on television and gave a speech in front of the prefectural lieutenant governor. One morning we visited Kinkakuji Temple, with its beautiful golden walls, and later that night we spent hours playing video games in a large arcade at the top of a train station in Kyoto. This is something I will never forget, and it all happened because I was wiggly in class one day. Story 7. A few months ago I received a moving violation. I happened to be right in front of a police officer and got a citation. That was the last straw that made me tell my parents about a financial problem I had been keeping to myself out of embarrassment. I had inadvertently missed a couple of car insurance payments and had 1 week to pay a large bill or my insurance would be canceled. I did not have the money and was planning to take out a loan from Czech City, which I had used before and had not realized had very high interest rates. When I got the ticket, I realized I could not afford everything, so I told my mother. Instead of scolding me about the traffic violation or the missed payments, she lectured me about payday loans and told me never to use them. My parents put me in touch with their insurance broker, who helped me get different coverage so I would not be without insurance and would have more time to save up and pay the old bill before it went to collections. My new insurance has lower premiums than my previous policy, so the ticket ended up saving me more money than it cost. If I avoid further moving violations and meet the requirements for dismissal by deferred prosecution, this may be the first citation to actually lower someone's insurance premiums. I learned 4 things from this experience. Stay hydrated and take breaks while driving for long periods. Highway hypnosis can be dangerous and can occur on any road, not only highways. Keep insurance payments up to date. Never take out payday loans. Be transparent with your family about problems. Someone may have a solution. Summary. A traffic ticket played a huge role in improving my financial situation. Story 8. I had just moved to London from Melbourne, Australia, and only had one friend outside my family in the city. On a Saturday night, my friend was busy and I was bored. So I looked up what was happening near me on Facebook events and found a basement concert for an American rapper called Mickey Blanco. A couple of hours later, I went to the gig alone. I threw away my lighter, went to the smokers section, and started asking people for a light to strike up conversation. I met a gay man who was pretty cool. He told me his husband ran a tequila bar in the East End that was looking for staff and that he would pass on my number. He did, and I got the job as a waitress. There was one other Antipodean there, a man from New Zealand whom I got along with well. 14 years later, that New Zealander and I are married with 2 children. We never would have met if my friend had not been busy that night. Story 9. I started dating a local guy who played World of Warcraft. I had not played in about a year and decided to play again with him. I created a new character on his server. A few weeks later, I found out he was married and had been cheating on his wife with me. I ended the relationship but stayed on the server because it had a nice community. A few months later, I met a really nice man while running some heroic dungeons. We have been together 15 years now. He moved across the country to be with me about 11 years ago. Story 10. When I was a depressed and lonely teenager, I went to a Radiohead concert in London. Fans were lining up all weekend, so we were there for about 12 hours. I made friends in line with two musicians in their late 20s, one of whom was kind to me in the profound and meaningful way one can be to a teenager. We kept in very sporadic touch after that, and he had no internet presence. I wrote a poem about his kindness and posted it on my Tumblr with his full name, which was a mistake, and then I went on with my life. We had not spoken for years when I received a message from a woman in the United States who had had a great time with him and planned to move to Spain but had accidentally left her phone in his car and needed it back. She had tried to find him without success because he had no internet presence, and the only result was my poem about how nice he had been. I sent a frantic email to an address I was not sure he still checked. They are married now, and she did not move to Spain after all. I hope they are happy. Story 11. I had no money, no heat, and barely any food during my first winter in Oregon. I was struggling, and the only thing I had for recreation was my Nintendo Switch. Years earlier, in easier times, I had bought Fire Emblem Three Houses mainly because Edelgard looked cool on the cover, but I had never played it. Playing a little at a time between working to fix my situation, I fell in love with Edelgard's route. When things got better, I started writing fan fiction. That reignited my passion for writing. Now I am back to full-time editing and writing work, and I always make time for fiction, which makes me happiest. I have never been more productive. My mental health is stronger, and I know what I want from life. It was thanks to Edelgard. If I had not been under extreme stress, there is no way I would have imprinted on her so strongly. I would not have needed to write about her, and none of this would have happened. It all started when I thought she looked neat and wondered what her story was. So I bought the game on impulse. Story 12. I was 21 and in the Navy, living in the student barracks. It was a rare holiday weekend when I was off duty, and all I wanted for Memorial Day was to stay in my room and read. A couple of the girls were trying to convince me to hang out with them and another friend on Monday. I was not planning to go, but I finished my last book about 30 minutes before they wanted to meet, so I decided to go. Right as I stepped onto the smoke deck, I saw him. Red hair and green eyes. He had just said something that made the people he was talking to laugh, and I knew in the deepest part of me that someday I would marry him. He knew the girls I was meeting, and we all hung out together that day. We just clicked, as though we had always known each other. 2 weeks later, we had an actual date, and another the next night. That is when he proposed. We got married 4 weeks later, which was 6 weeks after I first saw him. Everyone thought we were nuts, and they were probably right. All either of us had to go on was a gut feeling and a prayer that neither of us was secretly a serial killer. The prayers were answered. We celebrated our 25th anniversary this past summer. He is the best person I have ever known. Those green eyes I first noticed are kind and intelligent, and he is always making me laugh. The red hair darkened over time, and lately I can see gray highlights coming through. We have a son and a dog and an incredible, fulfilling life even when it is hard. I cannot imagine ever loving anyone more, and I do not think anyone else could make me feel so loved. In my wildest dreams, I never thought I would grow up to be so happy, all because I did not check one more book out of the library for the holiday weekend. Story 13. I was watching a brief, fun news segment about a woman who wrote Eat, Shoots and Leaves, a book about punctuation. I had struggled with speaking and writing, so I thought it would help me expand my horizons. I was reading a book a week after college, so I decided to try it. Reading it, I thought I already knew this. Then I realized I knew more than I had thought. I had taken a practice graduate management admission test in college and had done poorly at verbal reasoning, so I never considered business school. After reading the book, I took another graduate management admission test practice test and scored in the high 80s percentile. I decided to take the official graduate management admission test, scored 91% in verbal reasoning and about the 95th percentile overall, got into a top 15 business school and changed my career. All because of a lighthearted news segment about a woman who wrote a book on punctuation. Story 14. I was given the wrong date for a group interview, so I showed up on Thursday instead of Tuesday. The human resources representative could have simply apologized for the mix-up and said it was too bad. Instead, he said he had some time and took me through the technical tests and the interview questions so I could be added to the pool of candidates. I got the job and met my husband. Many years later, we started a business that employs many people and supports our local community. And we have 2 wonderful children. None of that would exist without the kindness of the human resources representative and his decision to interview me when he did not have to. Story 15. I missed a bus once and was very annoyed, but while waiting I met someone who became one of my closest friends. It is funny how small delays can change everything. Story 16. My principal asked if I could be the music teacher after seeing me play in a band. My hesitant yes led to nearly 20 years of teaching music, participating in national mentoring programs, making amazing friends, learning from everyone I know, and nominations for multiple awards. Yet I still feel like I do not know anything. Story 17. I went to a friend's house to chill. Another man was there. We both play soccer. I told him to call me if he ever needed a goalkeeper. They always do. Less than 2 weeks later, I showed up for his team. It was a coeducational team of guys I went to grade school with and some women I had never met. I played with them for about 6 months and learned that 2 of those women share my last name. Long-lost cousins found at age 23 because a random man happened to be at my friend's house that day. Story 18. My friend and I were driving to a different city to go shopping and changed plans mid-drive because of the weather. I met my husband at the place we went instead. A 10-minute conversation turned into 12 years and counting. Story 19. I was attending a weekend of placement testing for a high school I wanted to attend, a boarding school for academically focused students, essentially. It was state-run. There are about 24 schools in the United States like this, often called a state school of mathematics and science. I had some sort of stomach bug. The room was spinning, and I knew I was doing poorly on the exams. I went outside and sat on some steps waiting for my father to collect me. Suddenly a voice asked, "Are you dying?" It was a girl my age in a Catholic school uniform. Her face showed great concern. She sat with me until my father came. He saw how bad I was and arranged for me to retake the exams. For weeks later at the orientation weekend, a young woman with a shaved head approached me, and we figured out she was the Catholic schoolgirl. She wanted to let loose a little since she was transitioning from a highly controlled environment to a very low-control environment. A rising senior, introduced as the senior class president, took an interest in us. "Are you all rooming together? We have an empty room in our suite," she asked. Without a word or a look, we both said yes. It's been 20 years since. Lauren has been my maid of honor. We have traveled the world together. She is my oldest and best friend. Thank you for not letting me die alone that afternoon. Story 20. My parents divorced the year I was graduating, and my father walked away with my college fund. In high school, I was ranked 6th in my class. The top 5 received full scholarships to any in-state university, including room, board, and books. 2 of the top 5 said they were leaving the state, but the school could not award their scholarships to me. Instead, I received a 2-year scholarship to a local community college. Fine, I thought. I would take the basic courses and then transfer later. I ended up staying more than 5 years, taking many courses I did not need but learning a great deal. I met 2 professors for whom I later worked as a nanny, raising 4 children from 3 months to almost 6 years old. I became certified in self-contained underwater breathing apparatus diving with one of them and went to French Polynesia for a dive trip. The youngest of those children just turned 18. The oldest is in Japan finishing college. The 2 middle children work with special education students while attending school. All because I was 6th and not 5th. Story 21. I was bored at home and messaging people to see what they were doing. One said he was going for a hike. Another said he was going grocery shopping. I planned to hike but could not find my trail shoes, so I went grocery shopping with a friend and met my wife at the store. Story 22. This is a story about the time smoking saved my life. In my 20s, I commuted daily to New York City. My older brother did too, but I was a serious night owl and usually woke up an hour later than he did, so we rarely took the same train. One morning, I woke up unusually early for work and decided to ride with him to the train station and get to work early for the first time ever. I was almost always half an hour or more late for work as an information technology help desk technician. But everyone liked me and I was always willing to stay late, so they tolerated it. We were riding to the train station and I realized I had never been to the World Trade Center. My brother worked in that part of the city, so I could transfer with him, head over to the World Trade Center, have breakfast at the restaurant at the top of one of the towers, and check out the views. I might still have been about 30 minutes late for work, but that was normal. This was the morning of September 11th, 2001. Since I am writing this, it is safe to say I did not go through with the plan. I smoked in those days. When we got to the train platform on an unusually gorgeous September morning and an early express train pulled up, I had the strongest possible compulsion to have another cigarette. I had just finished one, but it was the strongest urge I have ever had to stand on that platform, enjoy the crisp morning, and have another cigarette. My brother got on the train and asked if I was coming. I stared at the open doors, pulled out a cigarette, and said I was just going to head into the office early. I would go see the World Trade Center another day. The train pulled out. I spent my time enjoying that cigarette and got on the local train when it pulled in about 15 minutes later. The local was about 40 minutes slower than the Amtrak Express, so I got to New York City about an hour later than I would have. The first tower was hit right about the time I would have been heading up for that breakfast view if I had followed through with my plan that morning. I say about because who knows how the actual timing would have worked. Maybe I would have stopped for a coffee before heading in and it would have hit when I was on the street. Maybe I would have decided to walk around Lower Manhattan for a bit and checked out both buildings before going up. Either way, I would have been closer. My brother made it to work that day and was in his office in one of the neighboring buildings when the planes hit. He was locked down in his building most of the day until they were evacuated and he had to walk north. I quit smoking about 12 years ago and I hate that I ever started. But if I had not bought my first cigarette at the beach on my 18th birthday and smoked half of it to look cool in front of my friends, maybe I would have gotten on that train in 2001. That is my story. Story 23. A friend went to a gig and wanted to roll a cigarette while in the queue. It was raining, so he asked the person in front to sit under her umbrella while he rolled. Long story short, they stayed in touch. He got together with her friend and introduced them both to the group. That woman became my wife. We have a daughter and have been together for 15 years. If it had not been raining, if he had been 5 minutes later to the venue and elsewhere in the queue, if he had not wanted to smoke, or if she had not brought an umbrella, my life would be completely different. Story 24. When I was 17, I interviewed for a gap year overseas. My top choices were Russia, Fiji, Poland, China, and Canada. I wanted a wildly different experience from my Australian upbringing. Canada was my last choice, but that is the country they chose for me. I am glad they did because I ended up loving it. I eventually moved there, found the person I love, started a family, and obtained Canadian citizenship. Story 25. 12 years ago, I posted a Craigslist ad for a dinner date. We are still married. Story 26. If I had not worn my red shirt with a cat print, I would not have started talking with the interviewer about how much we both liked cats. I relaxed, nailed the interview, and got the job. If I had not gotten the job, the interviewer would not have become my colleague and introduced me to her brother. I married him, all because of a red shirt with cats on it. Story 27. I was stuck in a dead-end job. One of my friends was in nursing school and often crashed at my house after her shifts because it was closer than her own place. She was doing practice exams and I joined in out of boredom. As I answered questions, I thought, this is actually pretty interesting. The next year, I moved back home and began pursuing an associate degree in nursing. 9 years later, I have a great career and my life has taken a complete turnaround. I had never considered nursing before that night, and I probably would still be a train wreck if I had not bothered my friend while she was doing her homework. Story 28. I attended a large Big Ten university as an engineering student. I played trombone and wanted to keep up with music, so during freshman orientation I went to the band building to sign up for the concert band. The administrator checking me in noticed I came from a high school whose marching band finished second in the university's annual statewide marching band competition. She urged me to join the school's marching band, saying it was one of the best in the nation. I protested that, as an engineering student, I did not think I would have the time. She replied that it did not take up much of the week, which proved to be one of the boldest lies of the 20th century. Freshman orientation week became marching band morning, afternoon, and evening. Hanging out with the marching band made me realize I might not want to be an aeronautical engineer after all. I left the school 6 months later, enrolled in journalism, met a woman who was the roommate of a bandmate, married her, had 2 children, and enjoyed a successful 32-year career in television news. I always tell my children they owe their existence to that lying band department administrator. Story 29. I dated a guy in college who had a big house and multiple roommates. My twin sister came over, became drunk, and hooked up with one of them. They have been together 21 years and have 2 children. I moved across the country after graduation. They moved 2 hours away from the college to the northern part of the state. My sister got a job managing a jewelry store in a mall, and the men from a mobile phone store would come to hang out and kill time. One mentioned he was planning to move across the country to the state where I was living, and my sister decided to play matchmaker. We have now been together almost 16 years and have a son. Neither of us would have met our husbands, and 3 children would not exist if I had not dated that first guy. My husband's journey to the West Coast is an even more random story. Life is full of twists and turns. Story 30. I live on the 25th floor of a high-rise condominium. I had dinner delivered to the lobby on the ground floor, but after speaking with the delivery person on the phone, I accidentally fell back asleep. A few minutes later, an earthquake of about magnitude 6 occurred. If I had woken up to get my food a few minutes earlier, I would have been in the elevator when the earthquake struck. I have given myself some grace since then when things do not go my way. Story 31. This was back when Pokemon Go was still hugely popular. We organized a raid with a group near a small building on a college campus. I arrived at the right building but the wrong entrance. Another player had the same mistake. I greeted her and told her I was waiting for the rest of the group. We chatted about the game until we realized our mistake, then joined the group, played the raid, and everyone went their own way. We met again the next day. Our group had been organizing legendary Pokemon raids since noon. We met at a large park for the raid and planned to go to another park for the next raid about 2 kilometers away. Some people took the bus and some rode bicycles. She and I decided to walk because, after all, Pokemon Go encourages exploration. During the walk, we got to know each other well and found we had many things in common. We were friends for a year before becoming an official couple. She has been my girlfriend for more than 7 years and counting. I'm about to get up and say good morning to her. I met the girl of my dreams by taking a wrong turn while playing Pokemon Go. Story 32. I was supposed to deploy with the Peace Corps in Guatemala in 2012. The day before I was to leave, I received a call informing me that our deployment had been canceled because of security concerns. Life was turned upside down. I had sold everything, quit my job, and was ready to get on a plane. I was offered a couple of alternative deployments and chose the quickest, which left me 3 months to prepare. I met a fellow volunteer, and we are now 13 years and the parents of 2 children. Turned out well. Story 33. I ordered pizza delivery, but the driver got my address wrong and showed up 3 streets away. By the time I found him, the pizza was a little cold. I complained jokingly, and he said he would give me a free one next time. He actually did, and we have been friends ever since. Then one night he invited me to join his friend group for a small get-together. That is where I met a girl. We started talking, hit it off, and now she is my girlfriend. Story 34. When I was in college, I took calculus over the summer. The content was presented blazingly fast, and while I passed, I had not retained enough to pass calculus 2. I switched to secondary education English. My brothers attended a university that had previously been a normal college specializing in training teachers, so I transferred to that university and changed majors again. I met a guy in my dorm and later became his roommate. I graduated and lost touch with him. 3 years later, I ran into him at a party. We started spending time together and I met his sister. We hit it off and got married. We have been married for 28 years. The best thing that ever happened to me. In summary, I failed Calculus 2 and got married. Story 35. I burned several pieces of toast in order to meet my husband. It started when I was a teenager and stayed at a summer camp with my future husband's cousin. She showed us pictures of her family, including her 8-year-old cousin. We were 14 at the time. 20 years later, I was helping my then best friend photograph her brother-in-law's wedding. She kept trying to get me to meet a cute guy she saw hanging out by the kitchen all night, but we were busy working, so I never had the chance. 6 months after that, I went to interview for a job and ran into one of the employees there. We made a minute's worth of small talk, and I joked that he should recommend me for the position. I did not get the job, but 2 months later my future husband accepted a different position at the same company. 2 years later I was looking for another job and saw that the position I had interviewed for was open again. I went in and this time I got the job. On my first day, I happened to be looking out my office window when I saw a silver truck pull up and a man in jeans, a gray shirt, and a backward cap get out. I texted my friend that a very attractive man had just arrived and I hoped he worked there. My theory is that the universe had been trying since our childhoods to bring us together. The timing finally became right. Story 36. Burnt toast led me to discover the joy of avocado on toast. Life-changing, I tell you. Story 37. I dislocated someone's shoulder at judo. I felt bad, so I took a first aid course. I met my wife there, and we have been together for 18 years. Story 38. I worked 2 jobs in college. While working my second job at an oil change shop, the boss's now ex-wife's friend came in and asked if I wanted to go see the jet cars at the Milan, Michigan Dragway. I said yes. Afterward, we went to my house. I showered, we had dinner, both of us got sick. And then we had a great time. We stayed friends and started dating about 4 months later. We've been together for 19 years and married for 17. We have a beautiful house and 3 chihuahuas together. It all started because a man named Craig, whom I worked with, had ghosted her. Story 39. Back in university, a guy friend in my first year asked why I was not friends with Jessica, saying we were similar. Jessica is a pseudonym. As an introvert, it was hard to start a conversation and we were nothing alike. But we hit it off. By the time university was over, I invited her to a family party. We took a picture that she posted to her WhatsApp story, and her older brother saw it and asked for my phone number. About 6 months later, he proposed to me. We are now married and have twins. I have lost contact with that guy friend. Story 40. In 2018, I went through a particularly rough patch that lasted about 5 years. I was in a job and a town I hated. My employment prospects were terrible, and my romantic prospects were poor. I went back home to the other side of the country for a week, ostensibly for a job interview, but really to say goodbye to my loved ones. My car broke down while I was there. Because of that, I could not afford to get back, so I was available for a surprise interview and landed a job that paid twice as much as the one I was leaving. Now I earn 1.5 times that amount, am completely debt-free, and have a very happy and healthy relationship with a beautiful woman. Story 41. A snowy day caused both my partner and another emergency medical technician's partner to call out. So we were paired together and spent the next 10 hours on the ambulance laughing non-stop. At the end of our shift, I cut up a pair of gloves and proposed that we be partners. We both changed our schedules to work together. Soon after, we started dating and we've been together for 7 years. We just had our first wedding anniversary. We have both moved off the ambulance into better careers. And we're as happy and in love as ever, all thanks to a snowy day. Story 42. Stanley Kubrick died. One of Kubrick's best films is A Clockwork Orange, but given the huge backlash it received on its original cinematic release, he requested that it never be re-released. The distributors and rights holders honored that request until his unexpected death in March 1999. 12 months later, for the first time, A Clockwork Orange was showing at my university theater. I stayed after lectures to attend. This was the days before smartphones and there was no pub on campus, so what was a student to do with hours to kill? One thing I found in my meanderings was a job board with old school cards pinned to it. There was a job for a real estate sales administrator, what the industry affectionately called a Saturday girl, who could answer phones and type contracts. I was not working, and even though the pay was small, I figured it would be a great way to learn how real estate worked. I would only make $75 per week, but if it saved me $10,000 on a house purchase someday, it would be worth it. The next day, I applied and got the job. My boss liked my logic about why I wanted it, and I fell in love with the simplicity of the industry. After I graduated in 2002, he offered me a full-time job. He knew I was not cut out for sales, so he put me in a dog's body or office manager role where I contributed to a wide range of functions. 2 years later, I became the state operations manager for one of the large real estate franchises. They needed someone they could fly into every new office to handle a wide range of functions. I ran training and audited trust accounts, sometimes in the same morning. 2 years after that, I became the youngest person ever offered partnership at an international business advisory firm. The breadth of expertise was an asset, and while I enjoyed the real estate industry, this allowed me to do the same work for larger organizations. My income doubled twice over 18 months. I am still doing this 20 years later, now fully remote while traveling the world with my family. If Stanley Kubrick had not died, I would not have gotten the real estate job, I would not have discovered advisory work, and I would not have ended up in the career and lifestyle I have today. Story 43. I went to a concert of a band I did not even like with my cousin and his friend. Afterwards, I went for a walk late at night, which was unusual for me. Then I talked with my brother's friend until 4 a.m. I woke up the next morning on a sunny day, the first day of the month, and realized that yesterday had been fun. I thought about how I am turning 17 soon, almost 18, and how I had spent my years in solitude. The air was fresh, and I heard people in the cafes on the street. I realized I would really like to try living. I decided to start by finally meeting a friend I met online through a classmate who followed him. I had just messaged him one day out of curiosity. Over a year of chats later, I met him, and for someone who up until then had never had a friendship and had spent the past 4 years in social withdrawal due to a psychotic episode and social anxiety, I felt something shift in my brain. I decided that no matter how uncomfortable and painful it all is, I need to push through if I want to live. I started caring about my appearance a bit more, going to the movies more often, and working with my therapist on my social skills and everything else that had piled up over the years. I hung out with him again and then met one of his friends, and for the first time in over a year, I spent time with more than one person who was not a family member. I went to my first party and came home really late for the first time. It feels like I am starting to experience youth for the first time. Yes, it hurts and it is chaotic, and I constantly need to remind myself that people who talk to me do not suddenly hate me and that I should not run away. But I feel like I have some good memories in store. I will be going to a concert in a few months. Story 44. My grandpa always told this story about the power of saying thank you. He received a scholarship that took him from what was then Rhodesia to Yale to study law, fully paid. When he arrived, he searched for and found the couple who sponsored him in New York and went to thank them. They told him that in all the years of offering this scholarship, he was the only person to ever find and thank them. That meeting led to a friendship. They offered him a job right out of law school at their very prestigious firm in New York, sponsored his visa, and eventually helped him obtain citizenship. That was where he met my grandma. The couple stood in as his parents at his wedding. He had a happy, successful life and always told anyone who would listen that it was because of the one moment when he decided to make the extra effort to say thank you. Story 45. The sawmill where I had worked for 10 years was shut down, and a temporary worker was brought in for a day and a half to write up our references. We will have been married 22 years in February. Story 46. In 2004, I was 21 and newly married but very unhappy. I lived in a super conservative religious area where I did not fit in, so I spent most of my free time on LiveJournal, connecting with people I could not meet in my local community. I was in a LiveJournal community for young married people and commented on a thread about not having any other married friends. One stranger saw my comment and added me as a LiveJournal friend, so I would have another married peer to talk to. She lived in the Midwest and I was in Virginia, but we were the same age and had a few things in common. We rarely interacted, but we followed each other's blogs for years and posted regularly, so we got to know each other without much direct conversation. Life went on. I got divorced, remarried, and moved to Portland, Oregon. She and her husband moved several times and eventually also moved to Portland because her parents lived here and they wanted to settle long-term. Shortly after they moved here, in 2011, it was her husband's 30th birthday. I was one of the only people their age they knew in town, so they invited me over to celebrate. I met them in person for the first time and we hit it off. We became regular board game buddies, hung out more, and built a friend group with other nerdy young adults. They had a child in 2014, and my flexible schedule let me spend a lot of time at their house, being an aunt and playing board games while they cared for their baby. Eventually, we bought houses in the same neighborhood. We encouraged other friends to join us and created an intentional community of supportive people. I am the aunt and godparent to their children. We have traveled together. We are family and have been for nearly 15 years, all because 7 years earlier we crossed paths on LiveJournal. Story 47. My best friend from high school introduced me to her younger brother 11 years ago. I married him 2 months ago. Does that count? Edited to add, I have never heard of the burnt toast theory. Story 48. I went on a date with a man I really did not want to go out with, but he was persistent, so I gave it a shot. I knew immediately I was right not to be into him, but we had a nice conversation. He talked about traveling around Europe, and for some reason that sparked something in me. I began researching travel in Europe and felt pulled to move my whole life to Italy. I did for 4 years. Now I am miserable here and I am returning to the United States next month, so I am not sure this was a good decision. That one date changed the next 4 years of my life. Story 49. I had a dream that sent me looking online for dream interpretation. The site I found had a forum that felt like a small community. I married someone I met there. They had found the site the same way. We have been married for nearly 15 years. Story 50. An eye infection destroyed my life. The doctor ordered a magnetic resonance imaging scan. I had an allergic reaction to the magnetic resonance imaging dye, died, and was resuscitated. I have suffered post-traumatic stress disorder and panic attacks for about 25 years. Story 51. I was at a fraternity party my junior year. I had been talking to a goth girl, and she left after about 30 minutes. I tried to convince her to stay, but she did not. I went to the bathroom after that. I considered leaving the party because I was already outside using the bathroom, but I decided to go back in. Inside, I met another girl with black hair. We talked, hit it off, and made out. That was nearly 20 years ago, and we are still together with a house and multiple pets. Story 52. I had a much too early dinner break during the night shift and met the woman who would later become my wife at a cafe I tried because I had a break before everything closed. She had been randomly asked to fill in at the counter, though she usually worked in the kitchen, so our toast was burnt. Story 53. I decided not to go back to my apartment to get my cigarettes. Because of that, I ran into the woman who would become my wife. If I had left 2 minutes later, I would never have met her. She is perfect, and I do not know what I would do without her. Story 54. I had fallen out with my cousin because of the person she was dating at the time. We had not spoken for 6 years. One night I had a lovely dream about her and woke up feeling lighter and happy. I decided to message her, and we rekindled our relationship. She is my rock and helped me with so many things in my life, and I have helped her too. We would both be lost without each other, as we are each other's support system. My life has changed for the better, all because of a dream. Story 55. In 2009, I was supposed to go to a birthday party on a Friday evening, but at the last minute I decided to spend the weekend in my hometown and went to a show at a local bar. I met my now husband there. Story 56. I had the wheels in motion to move from New Zealand to the United Kingdom. I was dating a woman at the time who went on a student exchange to the Netherlands. I visited her for 2 weeks and immediately changed my mind. When I returned to New Zealand, I altered my plans. I have been happily married to an amazing Dutch woman and have lived in Amsterdam for the last 12 years. If I had not visited her spontaneously, who knows how differently my life would have turned out. Story 57. Every time my dog stops to sniff something on a walk, I imagine she is delaying me just enough to avoid a car at the next intersection. Story 58. I didn't want to go to a high school dance alone, so I asked a boy to go with me. We started dating, stayed together through college, and married. He supported me through graduate school, including a 40-hour-a-week unpaid internship required for my degree. Now I am pregnant with our second child, have been married for almost 7 years, and am working in my dream profession. We bought a house together and live there with our child and our pets. I never expected to be a mother or to love it so much. I have my career and a wonderful home because I didn't want to go to a dance alone. Story 59. I volunteered to join the student council at my university when a classmate dropped out at the last minute. I met a man on the council who became my boyfriend shortly afterwards. I followed him abroad when he got a job in another country, and I found work there myself. The relationship lasted only a year after we had both moved abroad, but I stayed after we split up. After a few months of healing from a messy breakup, I went on a solo trip to a neighboring country where I met the man who is now my husband. We have been together for almost 8 years and have a 1-year-old son. I cannot imagine how different my life would have been if my classmate had decided to remain on the student council. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.